Hey everyone. Alright, today's video is going to be over subtracting decimals. As always, make sure you write down everything that you see me writing on the screen. Your objective: I will be able to add and subtract rational numbers fluently, and of course this video is focusing on subtraction. Alright, so whenever we are subtracting and there are negatives involved, I always say we do not subtract with negatives, we add the opposite. So let me show you what I mean by that. Alright, so here we have a positive minus a negative number, so a positive 9 minus a negative 5. So we're going to change the subtraction symbol to an addition sign, and then we're going to take the opposite of the second number. So if we have a negative 5, the opposite of that would be a positive 5. So now we really just have 9 plus a positive 5. And then we just add like normal, and we get 14. Here we have a negative minus a negative, so a negative 9 minus a negative 5. So again, I want to change this to addition. I want to add the opposite. So the opposite of a negative 5 is a positive 5. So now what I really have is a negative 9 plus 5. Now, in our last video, we discussed that if you have a negative plus a positive, and let me write that above it, negative plus a positive, really what you're going to do is you're just going to subtract the numbers. So if you were doing normal subtraction, 9 minus 5 would be 4. And then you want to take the sign of the higher number. So if it was actually 9 minus 5, 9 is the higher number, which is negative. So you're going to have a negative 4 as your answer. Alright, now we have a negative minus a positive. So we have a negative 9 minus 5. So we want to make sure that we are adding the opposite. So we're going to change our subtraction to addition. Now if this is a positive 5, we want it to be negative. So make sure that negative sign goes in front of it. So now we really have a negative 9 plus a negative 5. And remember, if we're adding negatives together, we're just trying to find the total number of negatives. So if we had 9 negatives and 5 negatives, we would have a total of 14 negatives. Alright, so the goal here is really just to take these subtraction problems and change them to an addition problem, and then you can just refer back to the rules from the last video. Alright, well what if we have two positive numbers? So like right here we have a positive 5 minus a positive 9. Now the second number is bigger, okay? So we can still apply the add the opposite rule. So I'm going to change subtraction to addition, and if this is a positive 9, I want to make it negative instead. So I will have a 5 plus a negative 9. Alright, so now I have a positive plus a negative instead. So we're really just going to subtract the numbers. 9 minus 5 is 4. And if we were actually working out 9 minus 5, 9 would be the higher number. It is negative here, so our answer must be a negative 4. Alright, 10 minus 19, same thing. We've got a positive minus a positive. So I want to change this to addition, and I want the 19 to be negative because that's the opposite of a positive. So I really have 10 plus a negative 19. Alright, so just like the previous problem, we have a positive plus a negative now. So I'm going to do normal subtraction, 19 minus 10. We know that's 9. Since 19 is the higher number, we know that it's negative here, so the answer must be negative. Alright, now whenever we are working with decimals, as always, we want to use those integer rules. We want to make sure we line up the decimals, and then we can solve. Alright, so example 1, we have two different subtraction problems. Here we have 6.44 minus a negative 3.2. So I have a positive minus a negative. So what I want to do is I want to add the opposite. So that means I want to have a positive plus a positive instead. So I'm going to make sure that I change that here. So I want to make that addition, and I want to make this negative number positive. So now I simply have a positive 6.44 plus a positive 3.2. Notice how I'm lining up my decimals. Empty space can be filled with a 0, and now we just simply add. And we get 9.64. Alright, letter B. We have a negative 2 minus a positive 4.8. So again, I want to add the opposite. So I want to have a negative plus, and the opposite of a positive is a negative. So that's how I want this to look. So I'm going to change this to addition, and I'm going to make this 4.8 negative. Okay, so if I'm adding negatives, I'm going to add the two numbers like normal, but my answer will be negative, because we're finding like the total amount of negatives. So we're going to have 4.8 plus 2. Now, 2 does not have a decimal, so anytime you have a whole number, you just have to think of it like the period at the end of a sentence. It's just going to go on that bottom right side. So this would really be 2.0. Now we're going to add. And that's our final answer. Alright, example 2, we have 2 more problems. So here we have a negative 9.5 minus a negative 8.2. So if I'm going to add the opposite, my new problem should look like a negative plus a positive. Alright, so I want to change subtraction to addition, and I want to make this negative 8.2 positive. So I really have negative 9.5 plus 8.2. So now that we have a negative plus a positive, remember when we are adding different signs, we're really just going to subtract them. So if this were a normal subtraction problem, we would put the 9.5 on top and subtract the 8.2. So we get 1.3. Now the higher number is 9.5. In this problem it is negative, so I know my answer must be negative. Alright, in letter B, we have 7.6 minus 8.7. So we have a positive minus a positive. But notice how this 8.7, if these were both positive numbers, this number is larger than 7.6. When we're looking at it normally, it's larger. So I have to do the same thing as I have been doing. I have to add the opposite. So I want to have a positive plus, and the opposite of a positive would be a negative. Okay, so we're going to end up following basically the same steps we did here. So positive plus a negative. Alright, so I'm going to rewrite this. So I'm going to have 7.6 plus, and the opposite of a positive is a negative, so I will have a negative 8.7. Alright, so just like this other problem, if we have a positive plus a negative and we're adding different signs, we're going to subtract them. So I'm going to take what would normally be the bigger number, and I'm going to subtract it. So I get 1 and a 1, so I get 1.1. Now 8.7, since that's the higher number in our subtraction, and it has a negative right here, we know that our answer must be a negative 1.1. Alright, now it is time for you to try. So the question will be popping up on your video shortly. So make sure you still show your work in your notes, and make sure you get that question answered online, and bring your notes with you to class. Alright, I'll see you next class day.